Also this week, a United Nations Commission released a report on human rights abuses in North Korea. Amidst all the indignation, though, was the realization that China will block any United Nations actions against its North Korean allies. Casey, is the U.S. powerless? Is there anything we can do to stop these atrocities?
You know, that is a very difficult question, and this is really where I would say my libertarian leanings come out, because I think largely in a case of a just purely tyrannical government like North Korea, we are largely, there's not much of a role that the United States can play. But I think that there are some reforms that we can to improve, to facilitate a turn in North Korea and in China. Currently, the United States has huge embargoes against North Korea. And I think the history of the United States embargoes, not just with North Korea, but with countries like Cuba, Iran, Libya, Sudan, Syria, really end up propping up the tyrannical government, specifically in North Korea. So the kind of philosophy of North Korea is something called, I'm probably going to butcher the name, it's called Juche, which really means oppression, where they see that they are being oppressed from the outside, and so they pride themselves in their self-determination, and they pride themselves in the fact that countries like the United States are largely refusing to trade with them. So I think if we really encourage trade and facilitate trade if possible, it could really perhaps facilitate democratic North Korea, no time in the near future, but perhaps a few decades down the line. I think we've seen this has been proven to work with China. After Maoism, it turned more friendly towards capitalism because of trade, and I think that perhaps lifting the embargo against North Korea would be the best thing the United States can say. As the French philosopher Frederick Bastiat once said, when goods don't cross border, soldiers will. And I think that trade and liberalization are the best strategy for the United States.
Dr. Veghte, your response?
Well, unfortunately, the situation in North Korea is bleak because we have very little influence over North Korea. And although it's true in general that trade is a way to exercise soft power over countries for human rights purposes, in this case it won't work because North Korea doesn't desire trade with us. As you said, they pride themselves on not trading with us. So this is an example of our bad behavior in the past coming home to roost. For decades we have supported regimes that violated human rights, whether it was the Shah of Iran or a whole range of authoritarian governments in Latin America, or during the Chinese Civil War. We supported the nationalists. We supported the nationalists of Chiang Kai-shek against Mao, even though we had internal reports in our own State Department saying that Mao's movement was more popular and actually more democratic initially than the nationalist movement was, which is mostly corrupt warlords. So we have very little credibility anywhere in the world, but especially in that region, as a defender of human rights. So now when we speak out for human rights, we have very little credibility with the Chinese. What we have to do over the long term is build credibility on human rights issues with everyone, so that when there's a time like this when we need to exercise soft power through our words, that people listen to us and we have credibility. With the Chinese, what we can do over the medium term is build the relationship with the Chinese through trade and other means, so that hopefully over the medium term China will try to exercise power on North Korea to improve the situation there. The Chinese are the only ones who can do anything, and unfortunately right now the Chinese aren't listening to us either because of our lack of credibility, so it's a difficult situation.
Casey, anything?
Certainly, I would say that diplomatic relations with China are probably our best bet, since the United States has them with China, whereas we don't with North Korea. But I would really say that this is going to be a long-term project, and there's really nothing that can very immediately be done. But I would agree as well that just kind of being a peaceful facilitator in negotiations with China could in fact perhaps down the line lead to some improved relations with North Korea, and eventually, hopefully one day, a more democratic North Korea.